Hi, I'm Danielle Edwards with the Investing News Network. I'm here with Fleta Solomon, the Managing Director at Little Green Pharma. Hi.
Good morning, or afternoon it is.
So, to start, I just wanted to ask a little bit about the work you do with Little Green Pharma.
Yes, so Little Green Pharma is Australia's first and currently only producer of cannabinoid medicines in Australia. So we were the first to actually cultivate and manufacture and give to patients. So we now have about 1,000 patients across Australia.
Broadly, what kind of trends have you noticed in Australia's medical cannabis industry?
So, when the industry opened towards the end of 2016, it was very slow to begin with. Doctors were uneducated about cannabinoid medicines. There was a very slow growth, even a year ago. So, in about August 2018, we had about 1,000 patients who were benefiting from cannabinoid medicines. Fast forward a year, and we now have about 15,000 patients across Australia. So there is a huge significance in the rise, simply because, one, our doctors are more educated about cannabis as a therapy, and also we've got a number of cannabinoid clinics that are actually opening up, so it's easier for our patients to access. So it's just now that we're starting to see where Canada was probably at the beginning of 2015, which is that exponential growth in patient numbers.
So, what does the landscape look like right now?
So at the moment, it is just for medical purposes. We keep getting asked about referendums and for legalisation, and there's no comment on that. People tend to guess that it's probably about 5 years away before Australia looks at legalising. Certainly from my point of view, we're focusing on the pharmaceutical side. We're looking at drug delivery and how the cannabinoids are best absorbed into the human body. And so we're looking at, for example, if somebody's got chronic pain, how do you do slow release drug delivery technologies for that particular patient? So for us, the landscape is all about pharmaceutical drug drug deliveries, and how giving patients a choice as to not only where their medicine comes from, but how it's delivered.
And what has the response been from investors?
So in Australia, it's really, again, where Canada took off a couple of years ago. So I think investors are very hungry, they're very supportive. However, we did see an early rise of a number of Australian listed companies that probably listed a bit too soon without having any runs on the board. So it was really on the sniff of medical cannabis. It wasn't that they necessarily had licenses. So I think our investor base now in Australia, they're very savvy. They are aware now of who they need to be investing in, but once you can prove that you're a legitimate business, that you have all of the licenses, and particularly if you have got processes and your systems in place so that you're actually now selling. So for example, we now have revenue, and so that's a very strong position to be in for future investing, and that's what the investors want to see at this point in time.
And I also wanted to ask a little bit about the Australian cannabis industry, that relationship with Canada, because I know that a good bit of I've read that a good bit of the cannabis supply is imported into Australia from Canada. So I wanted to know if is there interest in Canadian investment?
Sure. So until a year ago, Australian patients were limited to imported products, and most of these are from Canada. So Australia really do look to Canada, not only for its regulatory environment, what's worked and what hasn't, but also for its products. Australia has been very clear that the imported products really are a temporary measure until there's enough local cultivation to keep going. Realistically, I don't know if that will happen, because I don't think the government can pull a product off the shelf once a patient's actually been using a particular product. I think then Canada can look to Australia and see where they were a number of years ago. So we have a lot of support from investors in Canada. But like I say, we don't even really need to go outside of Australia, because the Australian investors are very hungry. Yeah.
With the support that the cannabis industry in Australia has had from Canadian investors, is there a move to sort of market yourselves or become attractive to Canada for that kind of support?
So it's a great question, and many Australian companies, when they started, had a bigger brother. So they partnered up with one of the big companies like Canopy or Aurora, and so they were always in the view that they would have a bigger brother to hold their hand. And I think that really helped, it really worked. We took a slightly different position on that and decided not to partner with a Canadian LP for no other reason other than we wanted to do it ourselves, and we wanted to differentiate so that we came across as a pharmaceutical company rather than a company that was backed by somebody that was in the recreational space. So I think for us, our philosophy is the medical space, and we're exporting into Germany and into other European countries, and we just didn't want to have that or be pigeonholed with a sort of a bigger brother and a recreational. But Canada has been absolutely instrumental in paving the way for Australians, and also, even for us, and we always get consultants out from Canada to help us along with our cultivation.
So right now, what's the focus? Is it purely medical for Australia? Are we looking at research and development, or maybe cultivation?
So again, in Australia, at this point in time, it is all medicinal. The focus is on the pharmaceutical side, and so we're seeing that exponential growth at the moment and development. I think in the next few years, the government, there may be some talk about legalising, but certainly from our point of view and from the Australian government's point of view, we feel very strongly that Australia are in a really unique position to supply the rest of the world with high quality grade medical cannabis medicines. Now there is, so Canada is very focused on the rec market as well. There's such a huge market in North America, and so there are a few companies from Canada who are obviously pushing into the European market, but Australia is in a really unique position because we allow the exports for a start, and we comply with the Single Convention on Narcotics Act, and our GMP facility is EU, so as a independent company, we're able to export to those other legal jurisdictions.
And so where do you think the Australian market is heading in the near term and longer term as well?
So I think we'll see a rise really in the next couple of years. So we're seeing where Canada was probably at the beginning of 2015. So we've got 15,000 patients at the moment. That's going to rise quite significantly. So the focus will be on Australia. As mentioned earlier, for economies of scale and for a business to really survive, we need to be able to export because Australia is a small market in comparison. So anybody in the industry will be looking to export, and I think Australia will be a big player in terms of the quality medications that we're going to be sending out from Australian borders into other jurisdictions where legal cannabis is accepted and imported.
And what are some of the key markets of export for the Australian cannabis industry?
Again, it's all medicinal at this point in time, and so where we're going to be exporting is to any country where it allows imports. And so because of that, that will be Germany, the United Kingdom. They've just come online recently, so they're a really big player. Switzerland, we're looking at doing something there as well. So New Zealand, they've just opened up. Thailand, we're speaking to Thais as well. So the Thailand is a really interesting and exciting market. And being in Asia, it's so close to Australia, and we have a wonderful trade agreement with Asia. So that's a really big market for us particularly.
And I also want to ask if there's anything you'd like to add about Australia's cannabis industry as it is now and where it's going.
So certainly there are a lot of regulatory hurdles in Australia, okay? There are a number of companies that can wait 2 years or more to get any response back from our Federal Office of Drug Control. So it really is a nightmare of an industry to work, but at the same time and on the flip side, when you do get there and when you do produce a product, the reason why there are so many hurdles is because of the quality control. So at the end of the day, we end up with a really beautiful high quality medicine, which Australia is known for its great agricultural practices, and then the end product is a very high quality medicine. So it's actually the strictest regulations in the world, but we know that we'll have the best product so that we can actually export that to any country.
This has been great. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.